What's going on, everyone? This is Kevin here, and in this video, we're going to be going over my top 5 favorite and top 5 least favorite things about the Samsung Galaxy A23. So let's get started. Now we're going to begin by going over my favorite things about the phone, and coming in at number 1 definitely has to be that we do have a side-mounted fingerprint sensor. So the power button doubles as the fingerprint sensor, making it very easy to access the phone. And as you can see here, it's very fast and responsive. Now, in addition to having the fingerprint sensor, this phone also supports face unlock, so I do appreciate that we do have multiple methods for accessing the Galaxy A23. Now, I know on some devices they have the fingerprint sensor on the back, and then on others, like the new Samsung Galaxy A53 5G, it's actually built into the display. So I'm definitely curious about which method of using a fingerprint sensor you're mostly a fan of. Do you prefer to have it on the power button, or would you rather have it on the back of the phone or on the front of the phone? I'm definitely curious to know what you think, but for me at least, I think it's really convenient having it right here. Now, my second favorite thing about the Galaxy A23 definitely has to be the display that we're getting here with the phone. Now, I know that there are some people that are disappointed that it doesn't feature an AMOLED display, but at least with this display, it's PLS LCD, it's 1080p, and we're getting a 90 Hz refresh rate. So a faster refresh rate compared to devices that have a 60 Hz refresh rate. And with that, it pretty much gives us a more premium feel when going through the whole operating system here. Now, even though this display is not Super AMOLED or AMOLED at all, I actually do think it does look really good. Colors in general are pretty nice, and things do look crisp and clear here. And I'm also glad that they did at least give us 1080p instead of giving us a 720p display. Another great thing about this display as well is that it does feature a very large 6.6-inch panel. So what's nice about having a phone with a large display is that it makes it especially ideal for social media browsing because you're able to see more of your feed in one frame here, especially with it being a 20:9 aspect ratio. And then as far as watching video content goes, you're going to get a very immersive experience by watching videos on such a large canvas. So if you're big into using your device for multimedia purposes, then I think you're definitely going to like the Samsung Galaxy A23. Now, my third favorite thing about the A23 definitely has to be that we have a 3.5mm headphone jack. Now, at this point in 2022, there are not too many devices that still offer a headphone jack, and pretty much all the ones that actually do at this point are lower end phones. So it is good to see that we at least still have it here with the A23, but I do know that there are other devices in this year's A series that don't have a headphone jack any longer. For example, the Galaxy A53 5G has no headphone jack, and I'm pretty sure the A33 5G also doesn't have a headphone jack. So at least with the A23, we still do have that, and I know that by now many people use Bluetooth headphones as their go-to, but at the same time, I'm sure many of us have traditional wired headphones laying around, or maybe you even prefer to use wired headphones. Then at least with having a headphone jack on the phone, you still have that option, and you don't have to use an adapter with the USB-C port to actually use wired headphones. So I guess my point is that by having the headphone jack on the device, there's really no downsides with it, and there's only good sides. Now, my fourth favorite thing about the Galaxy A23 definitely has to be the cameras that we're getting here with the device. Now, by no means are really any of the cameras here good if you compare it to a higher end device like the S22 or S22 Ultra, but for a budget device, not only are we getting a lot of different camera hardware features here by having so many different ones that all do different things, but the results are actually pretty decent. And if you want to see a variety of different photo and video samples, then stay tuned for my full review video about this device. But essentially, no, you're not getting the best photo quality out there by any means, but for a lower end device, we are getting good enough image quality, but also more importantly, we're getting a bunch of different options here because we have a 50 megapixel main camera, a 5 megapixel ultra wide angle camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and then we also have a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera that allows us to take portrait mode photos with the rear and front cameras. And then the front facing camera is 8 megapixels. In case you're curious, here's how things do look on the camera app. This is with the main camera right now. Then we can easily switch over to the ultra wide angle camera to fit a lot more content into the frame here. We can then go over to the More tab and access the macro camera to take close-up images. We can then go back and go over to portrait mode to get those blurred out backgrounds. And then we can do the same thing with the front-facing camera as well. So there's me right there. We can even do group selfies if we want to, and we can take standard selfies as well. So a lot of different abilities when it comes to the various cameras that we're getting here with the Samsung Galaxy A23. And then to finish off my list of my top 5 favorite things about this phone, coming in at number 5, definitely has to be the large battery that we are getting here. So with the Galaxy A23, we have a 5,000 milliamp hour internal battery. So that's a very large battery for a smartphone, and you should definitely expect to get at least a day, if not 2 days of usage out of this device. But in addition to getting really good battery life with it due to how large the capacity of the battery is, the other benefit with that is that as the battery does degrade over time and can't hold as much of a charge as it used to, which happens with every smartphone by the way, you're going to be in a better position considering that the battery was probably already bigger than it needed to be starting off. So if Samsung would have done the bare minimum as far as battery capacity goes with this device, then definitely after a year or so, it would be very noticeable that the battery can no longer hold as much of a charge compared to when it was new. But considering that we're already getting really good battery life with the device, then as the battery isn't able to hold as much of a charge, it's not going to be quite as big of a deal, which is certainly a really important thing if you're planning on keeping this phone for multiple years. But let's now move on to my top 5 least favorite things about the Samsung Galaxy A23. Now keep in mind, in general, I think this is a very good phone, and I also understand that this is a budget device, so we're not going to be getting all the various features that we'd be getting with a much more expensive phone. You're certainly getting what you're paying for with this device. However, these things that I'll be going over are probably things you might want to consider prior to getting the phone so that you aren't potentially surprised if you do end up getting the device. But coming in at number 1 definitely has to be the materials that the phone is made out of. Now thankfully, for the display, we do have Corning Gorilla Glass 5, which does make it decently durable. However, for everything else, the phone is made completely out of plastic, and in addition to that, the plastic material that we do have here has a glossy finish, so I can definitely see this phone getting scratched up as time goes on, so I do recommend getting a case for it. So if you're coming from a higher end S-series phone or maybe a Galaxy Note, where those devices are constructed out of a combination of glass and metal, then you'll definitely notice that if you switch to the Galaxy A23, that the materials are not nearly as premium here. The good news though at least is that the phone does feel of quality construction, and it certainly doesn't feel cheap by any means. It's just that you certainly notice that it is made out of plastic versus being made out of more premium materials. Now coming in at my second disappointment with this device, and that definitely has to be the water drop notch up top. We're in 2022. I'd really prefer for notches to go away forever. Of course, Apple still has to do that themselves, but as far as Samsung goes, they have some phones that have a notch, they have other phones that don't have a notch. I know that the Galaxy A21 and A21s that came out a few years ago that technically were predecessors to this phone, those phones had hole punches for the front-facing cameras. So I definitely wish that Samsung would just ditch the water drop notch once and for all and at least stick to giving us hole punches for the front-facing cameras. Now my third issue with this device is that there is no 5G support. So at this point in 2022, 5G certainly isn't a necessity, but at the same time, it is becoming more and more relevant as time goes on, and of course, it is the next generation following up 4G. So considering this phone can only connect to 4G LTE, that definitely doesn't help future-proof it, considering that 5G is definitely the future. So I'm sure you could definitely get by for several years, if not longer than that, by just using 4G LTE, but you are going to be missing out on your carrier's latest network innovations. So that is something worth considering. My fourth least favorite thing about this device definitely has to be that there is no wireless charging. Now, wireless charging is a feature that we typically find with higher end phones, so it's really not a surprise that we don't have it with the A23. But keep in mind that if you currently have a phone with wireless charging and you find yourself using that feature on a regular basis, then you don't have that here with the A23. So it would have been nice if Samsung did include it, considering that I don't really think wireless charging costs that much extra to add. I have seen a few lower end devices have it, so I don't think it would have been impossible for Samsung to incorporate wireless charging, but I have a feeling that they don't give us wireless charging with this device because they want to give us a reason to buy something more expensive. Now coming in at number 5, this is similar to my issue with having a water drop notch up top, but the design of this phone is pretty boring overall. Now I do like at least the color that we're getting here, and of course the whole layout of the phone is very practically minded. So if you just want a phone to use and that's it, and you don't care about the design of it, then there's certainly nothing wrong with the design of this device. But I have reviewed dozens of phones at this point that have a very similar design and form factor to this one. So the Galaxy A23, while it doesn't have a bad design, at the same time, it doesn't bring anything really new or interesting to the table here. If you've been a follower of this channel for a while, then I'm sure at this point you're pretty tired of seeing this same design of having a water drop notch up top, a little bit of a thicker bottom bezel, and then a camera module with a few circles. So that's how many of these budget phones have been over the last several years or so. So I'm definitely looking forward to eventually reviewing and covering some more interesting and newer and updated designs. Because really, with the design that we're getting here with the A23, this phone could have come out at any point within the last 3 or 4 years. So like I said, my top 5 favorite things were meant to highlight what I really like about the phone, and as far as my top 5 least favorite things go, those are mostly things that, aren't deal breakers, but at the same time you might want to consider prior to getting this device. But this concludes my video on the best and worst things about the Samsung Galaxy A23. Definitely curious to know what you think in the comment section below, but this is Kevin here, and I will see you in the next video. Take care and have a great rest of your day.